I brought my scissors along because I wanted to show you what I use to do these fine cuttings. Years ago, I used ordinary cuticle scissors or fingernail scissors and was able to cut pretty small with the fine tips. Then, after a while, I decided even better scissors would work even better. So I went to a medical supply store and picked out this tiny, tiny, tiny pair of scissors which were used for eye surgeries before the days of lasers. I brought one that I just started a couple days ago, and I'll tell you a little bit about the composition. Composing the picture is probably the hardest part for me. Once I get into the cutting, it gets to be easier and easier. After I get my picture composed, I start poking holes and cutting away at the little areas. This composition started with the idea of just doing Canadian geese. I found this beautiful picture online of the big goose, and then I started pasting other geese behind or underneath the large goose. So I composed the arrangement of the geese, and then with pencil drew in the picture of the mountains and the lake at the bottom, and trees, an outline of trees that'll show up really nice when I get finished. So you can see that the composition is really important. One of the things I found when I start cutting is to make sure I do the little areas first and leave big connecting areas to hold the picture together so the picture doesn't fall apart. Also remember that you're working with a reverse image. So after the picture's done, and I've looked at it like this for hours and hours, when it's finished, the geese will be flying in the opposite direction, above the lake and the trees. One of the things I believe is that God has created such beauty in nature that it's important for me to capture that beauty. Part of the beauty of nature is its randomness and chaos, the irregularity of everything. So when I'm cutting these small trees, I do my best to not make every tree the same, but to make slight variations in each tree, or slight variations in the feathers and markings of the geese. That gives you a feeling of naturalness that only God can really create. I enjoy the focus that scissor cutting requires. Those little areas that I poke out and snip away around the edges of the trees, and the little branches, and sometimes even on the bigger trees, I'll cut the needles. As I cut, tiny pieces of paper fall onto the cardboard that I hold on my lap, and I get the snippets. And after that gets kind of full, if I need to get up and get a drink, I dump the snippets on the table and start all over again. This scissor cut of the Oregon coast shows one of our favorite scenes, the rocky cliffs of the southern Oregon coast, and the lighthouse. One of our favorite was at Bandon, and another one is Tillamook. And when I cut this, we lived in Coos Bay, North Bend. I was the pastor at Gloria Dei Lutheran Church and enjoyed the coastal scenes. My wife's favorite part of this picture is the lighthouse keeper, who is standing out here at the edge of the cliff, and if you look very, very carefully, he's holding a telescope watching the waves break against the rock. I usually add a bird or two. This time I got the seagull, actually two seagulls, whose wingtips cross the clouds and give an impression of the bird high up in the sky. Another thing about scissor cuts is that after they've been in the frame a while and matted, there's a little space between the glass and the scissor cut. So you can see, if you look really close, and the light hits it just right, shadows behind the paper. It's glued down here and here and here and here. But the other lines, clouds, seagull, and waves move away from the background of the scissor cut or back from the mat and give a little shadow and depth to the picture.